I was still hooked up to machines when she called me. My voice was weak, my mind cloudy from the coma, but I remember every word she said. "Now it's my turn to live like you," she laughed. "You always had everything. I just figured, it's time you paid for it." I thought it was a joke. Until I opened my banking app. My hands were trembling. My body still hadn't healed. But what I saw made my chest tighten harder than any injury. 120,000. Dizina handbags. Jewelry. Flights. Spa packages. All charged to my credit card while I was unconscious. My name is Elise Harper. I'm 6. I work in healthcare analytics. I've built everything I have from scratch. I'm also a wife and a mother of 2. And right now, I was recovering from a car accident that nearly killed me. But someone else was busy spending my life away. Her name is Savannah. She's my sister-in-law. And when she couldn't take having less than me anymore, she took everything. She didn't even try to deny it. In fact, she sounded proud. "I found your credit card in your bag when I visited. I thought you wouldn't miss it." Honestly, Elise, this is just me getting even. Even? Even for what? For working hard? For never treating her badly, even when she mocked my job, my clothes, my house? I felt like I couldn't breathe. And the worst part? She wasn't just stealing my money. She was stealing the peace I needed to recover. That's when something in me snapped back into place. Not fear. Not rage. Clarity. She thought I was too weak to fight back. She thought being family would protect her. She forgot one thing. This hospital had security cameras. And I helped install them. If you've ever been betrayed at your most vulnerable moment, drop the word trust in the comments below. Let's see how many of us know that kind of pain. Because what came next wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Before the accident, before the betrayal, Savannah was just Derek's sister to me. Not exactly a friend, not exactly an enemy. She was always there, hovering on the edge of family dinners, making offhand comments that never sounded like jokes, even when she pretended they were. She'd say things like, "Wow, Elise, another new bag. Must be nice having a job where you sit and stare at a screen all day." End of quote. Or, "It's not your fault, really. Some people just get lucky in life." I laughed it off. You do that with family, right? Smile through it. Swallow the sting. Derek, my husband, grew up protecting her. She was the wild one, the creative spirit with no filter and no boundaries. When we first got married, I thought she was just struggling to find herself. I was patient, supportive, even. I helped her land a part-time gig at a nonprofit I used to consult for. She quit 2 weeks in, said the work wasn't aligned with her soul. Still, she was family. When we had our first baby, she came over twice, once with a bottle of wine I couldn't drink, and once uninvited at 1 p.m., just to hold the baby. She never offered help, never stayed long. But when I was in the hospital, suddenly, she was everywhere. According to Derek, she stepped up like a hero. She brought groceries, picked up the kids, sat by my bed a few times. And at first, I was grateful. It felt like maybe she had turned a corner. But looking back, there were signs. Tiny things that didn't make sense. My nurse once mentioned how talkative my sister-in-law was, chatting in the room like it was a brunch table. The kids said Savannah promised to take them to Disneyland using Aunt Elise's treat. Even Derek mentioned she was spending a bit more than usual, but he brushed it off. I was too busy trying to survive. Too exhausted to read the signs. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel it, that low hum of tension every time Savannah entered a room. That unspoken imbalance. She always seemed to walk in like she had something to prove. Like I had something she deserved. She made comparisons constantly, our homes, our clothes, our choices. Once, during a birthday dinner, she looked around our house and said, "It's funny how some people just attract abundance. Maybe it's the hair. I do. Then she laughed like it was the most harmless thing in the world. But jealousy doesn't always come with screaming or slamming doors. Sometimes it arrives wrapped in a smile, dressed up as a compliment. And I wanted to believe we were okay. That she didn't mean it. That I was imagining the edge in her tone. Because if I acknowledged what I really felt, I'd have to admit something much harder. That someone in my own family didn't wish me well. So I played my part. The good wife. The supportive in-law. The woman who made space, even when that space was being taken advantage of. But the thing about ignoring tension is, it doesn't go away. It grows. It sharpens. Until one day, it snaps. And when it does, you either break with it, or you fight back. She called again the next morning. Not to check on my recovery. Not to ask how I was feeling after nearly dying. She called to justify herself. The phone buzzed on the tray beside my hospital bed. My hand was still stiff from the IV, but I picked it up. The caller ID reads Savannah. I hesitated. Part of me didn't want to hear her voice again. But another part, the part that was still reeling, needed to know why. I pressed answer. Hey, she said. Her tone was light. Too light. Like this was any normal day. Like she hadn't emptied my bank account while I was in a coma. I figured I should explain before you overreact. I said nothing. Just listened. Look, she sighed. I didn't steal from you, Elise. I borrowed. I mean, really, what's the difference between your husband helping out and me just helping myself a little? My fingers clenched around the phone. You always have everything, she continued. The job, the house, the perfect family. Meanwhile, I'm struggling to pay rent, and you're over there with 4 closets full of clothes you probably forgot you owned. She paused, as if waiting for me to acknowledge how reasonable she sounded. When I didn't, her voice sharpened. I found your card in your purse that day at the hospital, she said flatly. You were unconscious. You didn't even know what day it was. And I was helping Derek. I stayed with the kids. Cooked dinner. Cleaned. Ran errands. So I thought. Another pause. Then she said it, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. This was just my way of getting even. Even. That word echoed in my head like a gunshot in a closed room. Even for what? For having a job I earned? For staying up every night for 10 years to build a career she said wasn't real work? For being the one who remembered every birthday while she forgot her own nephew's name last year? I could barely breathe. But I kept my voice steady. Savannah, I said, slow and cold. What you did is illegal. She laughed. Actually laughed. Oh, please, don't be dramatic. We're family. And you should be grateful I stepped in while you were out of it. Think of it as compensation. Compensation. For what? Being decent. For not cutting her off sooner? I stared at the ceiling, letting silence do the talking. Then I said, thanks for telling me all this. Honestly, it's helpful. There was a beat of hesitation on her end. What do you mean? Nothing, I replied. Just appreciate the clarity. And I hung up. For a long time, I lay there staring at the hospital ceiling. The monitor beside me beeped in slow, steady rhythm, like a heartbeat too calm for what was happening. That phone call changed everything. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about what she believed she was owed. About how far someone would go when they feel entitled to your life. And suddenly, I didn't feel powerless anymore. I felt ready. If you've ever had someone cross a line and act like it was their right, leave a comment below that says, not yours, never was. Let's remind each other we don't owe anyone our peace. Because Savannah thought she had the upper hand. She just didn't know. I had something she didn't. Proof. I didn't call Derek. I didn't scream. I didn't even cry. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling tiles in my hospital room, letting everything she said replay in my mind. Her laugh. Her pride. The way she said, this was just my way of getting even. It would have broken me. if I hadn't already spent the last 12 days broken. But this time, something felt different. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't confused. I was clear. She thought I was weak because I was lying in a hospital bed. But weakness and silence are not the same thing. And she forgot one very important detail. This wasn't just any hospital. It was the hospital where I had spent the last 5 years consulting on security analytics. I helped design the data infrastructure. I trained half the tech staff myself. And just last year, I signed off on the installation of a smart surveillance system for every ICU room. One that recorded video and audio around the clock. She didn't know that. But I did. I reached for the call button and pressed it. A soft chime echoed through the room. A few seconds later, Nurse Laney stepped in, bright smile, clipboard in hand. "Morning, Elise," she said gently. "You doing okay today?" I gave her a small nod. Then I met her eyes and asked, "Are the surveillance cameras in this room still active?" She blinked. "Yes, ma'am, always on. Why?" I took a breath. My voice was hoarse, but steady. "I need someone from security. And I need to speak to a police officer." Her smile faded, replaced by something sharper, professional, alert. "Is something wrong?" I nodded. "Something's very wrong." Oh. She was back in less than 20 minutes, accompanied by a man in a gray uniform and a kind face. Officer Dane. He asked if I wanted to give a statement. I told him I would. But first I asked him to check the security footage. He agreed. The security techs pulled the footage from the night Savannah said she was helping with the kids. It didn't take long. Officer Dane came back into the room holding a tablet. His jaw was clenched. "There's something you need to see." He pressed play. There she was. Savannah. Wearing my husband's hoodie, walking into my room like she belonged there. She glanced around casual, like she was checking on me. Then she leaned over my nightstand, opened my purse, and took out my wallet. She held my credit card up to the light, smirking. Then she took out her phone. Snap. 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 3 photos. One final glance. And then she slipped the card back in gently, like nothing ever happened. I couldn't look away. Not because I was shocked, but because it felt like the moment I stopped being the victim in someone else's story and started writing my own chapter. Savannah thought no one was watching, but the camera didn't blink. And now, finally, neither would I. There's something deeply surreal about watching someone betray you. On camera. Like watching a movie you forgot you were in. Only this time, there's no director yelling, "Cut." Just silence. Just truth. The tablet rested on my lap, screen still glowing. Officer Dane sat beside me, quiet, respectful. I could tell this wasn't his first time seeing someone blindsided by the people they trusted. But maybe it was the first time he saw it happen so casually. "She didn't hesitate," he murmured. "Didn't even look nervous." I nodded. Because she didn't think I'd ever know. But I did. Now I did. And it wasn't just the card. The security team found more. They pulled footage from 3 separate nights. On one, Savannah sat next to my unconscious body, scrolling through my wallet like she was picking out gum. On another, she took selfie smiling beside my IV drip. Like this was her victory lap. And then, there was the audio. Clear as glass. A nurse had entered the room during one of her visits. Savannah didn't see the body mic clipped to the nurse's badge. Didn't know she was being recorded. The conversation was short, but telling. "She's out cold, huh?" Savannah had said, tapping her fake nails on the edge of my bed. I swear, if I had her life, I wouldn't complain so much. The nurse chuckled politely. "She's been through a lot. Tough accident." Savannah scoffed. "Yeah, but at least she gets to sleep through it. Meanwhile, I'm stuck babysitting her kids and picking up her groceries. Someone should pay me for this." She said it like it was a joke. But no one was laughing. I gave Officer Dane the full story, everything from the phone call to the banking records. to the history between me and Savannah. He took detailed notes, barely blinking. Then he asked me something I didn't expect. Would you like to press charges? I looked at him. For a moment, I just sat with the question. It felt so final, so heavy. But then I remembered her voice, her smugness, her complete lack of remorse. And I remembered the look on my children's faces when they said, Aunt Savannah bought us stuff with your credit card. Like it was normal. Like this was how family worked. Yes, I said clearly. I do. He nodded. Then we'll move forward. I'll file the report and flag her address. We have everything we need. If you've ever uncovered the truth and it hit you harder than the lie ever did, type proof over pain in the comments. Let's show that the truth still matters. Because that's the thing about liars. They forget that lies are fragile. They rely on silence. They rely on shadows. But cameras? They don't lie. They don't flinch. They remember. And now, so would everyone else. Derek arrived just before sunset. I could hear his steps coming down the hallway fast, anxious. The sound of sneakers skimming hospital tile. Then the door opened, and he stepped inside, face flushed, eyes wide. Elise, he said, breathless. What's going on? I sat up slowly, still sore, still stiff. He looked down at me like he was trying to read my face before I spoke. She called me, he continued, his voice tight. Savannah, she was crying, said you're accusing her of something, that you're trying to ruin her life? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached for the tablet Officer Dane had left on the tray beside me. The screen was still on pause, frozen on the frame where Savannah stood over my purse, phone in hand, card in the other. I didn't say a word. I just pressed play. Derek watched in silence. First came the video. Savannah walking into the room like she had every right to be there. The glance over her shoulder. The swift hand into my bag. The credit card lifted into the light. 3 quick photos. The smirk. The exit. His jaw clenched. Then came the audio. The nurse. The sarcasm. Savannah's voice. Someone should pay me for this. Derek sat down hard in the chair next to me. His hands dropped into his lap. He didn't blink. She said... He started, then stopped. Swallowed. She told me she came in here to pray for you. I said nothing. He looked away, blinking rapidly now. 2 believed her. I reached out slowly, resting my hand on his. It felt like touching something brittle. Something breaking. She helped herself to $120,000, I said quietly. And she thought you'd never question it. Derek let out a soft, broken breath. All the denial in his posture began to fall away. He looked like a man whose foundations had just cracked beneath him. She's my sister, he whispered. I trusted her with everything. With our kids. With you. I nodded. I know. He shook his head, more to himself than to me. This whole time, I thought she was finally trying to do better. But all she did was... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. For the first time, Derek truly saw what I had felt for years. Not just the jealousy. Not just the digs and eye rolls and passive-aggressive comments. But the entitlement. The slow erosion of boundaries masked as family loyalty. He looked back at the tablet, now dark and still on the tray. His voice was barely audible. She used you. And she used me to get close enough. I squeezed his hand. I didn't want it to be true either, I said. But she made her choice. Derek nodded slowly, like the weight of that sentence was still settling into his bones. Then he stood up, turned toward the window, and just stared out at the orange-pink horizon over the hospital parking lot. It was the first time I'd ever seen him truly still. Truly speechless. Not from shock, but from grief. Not the kind you feel when someone dies, but the kind you feel when someone you thought you knew never really existed. It didn't take long for the damage to spread. Not from Menno, from the truth, but from her. Savannah moved fast. Within hours of leaving that voicemail for Derek, she was already in full damage control mode. She called cousins we hadn't seen in years, messaged old friends, even reached out to my coworkers on LinkedIn. She told everyone I'd had a breakdown, that the accident had messed with my head, that I was hallucinating things, lashing out. She claimed I had given her the credit card willingly, that it was all part of some healing agreement between sisters-in-law, that now I was twisting the story because I couldn't handle being the center of attention anymore. It was so absurd, I almost laughed. Almost. Until my phone buzzed with a voicemail I wasn't expecting. Patricia, Derek's mother. Her voice, sharp and cold. You should be ashamed of yourself, Elise. Jealousy doesn't suit you. Savannah told me everything. How dare you try to destroy her after all she's done for your family? I sat there holding the phone to my ear long after the message ended, unable to move. The words stung deeper than I wanted to admit. I had always tried with Patricia. Always smiled when she called Savannah free-spirited and called me too rigid. Always invited her over. Always included her in the kids' birthdays, holidays, school recitals. And now? She believed I was the villain in all this. The storm wasn't just outside, it was in the family group chats, the silent stares from neighbors, the sudden coolness from people who used to smile. It was in the tension between me and Derek, even as he tried to shield me. She's manipulating everyone, he said, pacing our hospital room. I know, I replied. And she's been doing it for years. They just didn't want to see it. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't going to let her win the narrative. Because the truth wasn't just on my side. It was on record. And I was done staying quiet to keep the peace. Later that day, Derek looked at me and said, maybe it's time we show her mom the footage. I hesitated. It felt cruel, in a way. Like tearing the blindfold off someone who doesn't want to see. But then I remembered the voicemail. The way Patricia called me jealous. Number. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reality. The next morning, Derek made the call. Mom, he said gently. You need to come to the hospital, alone. There's something you need to see. She agreed, still defensive, still full of fire. But she came. And when she stepped into that room, everything began to shift. But that is another story. Patricia walked in like a woman ready for battle. Her purse was clutched tightly under her arm, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't greet me. Didn't ask how I was doing. She looked straight at Derek and said, this better not be another attempt to turn me against my daughter. Derek didn't respond. He just motioned toward the chair beside my bed. Sit, he said quietly. Please. She hesitated, then lowered herself into the chair, back stiff with suspicion. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Derek reached for the tablet. Same footage. Same still frame paused mid-movement Savannah, hand deep in my purse, camera catching her every move. He pressed play. The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of the machine monitoring my vitals. Patricia's eyes narrowed, then widened. She leaned in as Savannah snapped photos of my credit card, then tucked it back with the casualness of someone who'd done it before. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then came the audio. Savannah, joking with the nurse. Laughing. Calling my coma a vacation. Saying someone should pay her for babysitting my life. Patricia's face drained of color. She clutched her purse a little tighter. "Two don't understand," she whispered. "She told me you gave her permission. That it was a misunderstanding. She said you were just embarrassed and trying to turn people against her." Derek sat on the edge of the bed and looked at his mother. His voice was steady, but there was an ache underneath it. "Mom?" Savannah stole from Elise while she was unconscious. She lied. To me. To you. To everyone. Patricia's hands trembled. Her eyes flicked from the screen to me, then back again. But the bags, the clothes, she told me they were gifts. From friends. She said she won a contest for one of the handbags. I said nothing. Because what do you say to someone who is finally, painfully, watching their illusions fall apart. She stared at the screen a little longer, then slowly leaned back in her chair. Her jaw worked like she wanted to argue, wanted to believe something else. But the evidence didn't blink. Didn't bend. It was there. Clear. Undeniable. A long silence filled the room. Then Patricia spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. I wanted to believe she was better than this, she said. She always had trouble with boundaries, but I thought she was growing up. Changing. Derek didn't say anything. He just looked at his mother, then at me. And for once, there was no divide in that room. Just three people tired, shaken, and a little broken trying to process what betrayal really looks like when it wears a familiar face. Patricia stood up slowly, smoothing her blouse with shaking hands. She didn't apologize. Not yet. But she looked at me longer than she ever had before. And I could tell. The story she had clung to about the daughter who just needed a break, who was misunderstood. That story had finally started to die. Sometimes, the truth isn't loud. It doesn't scream. It just plays on a screen. And rewrites everything. The courtroom smelled like old paper and disinfectant. It was quiet. Too quiet, like the air had thickened just enough to muffle every sound except your heartbeat. I sat in the front row, hands folded tightly in my lap, the sleeves of my blazer slightly covering the hospital scar still fading from my wrist. Derek sat beside me, posture stiff, jaw clenched. Savannah walked in like she was auditioning. Polished. Composed. Wearing a pale blue suit that didn't quite fit her, like someone had dressed her for the part of innocent. Her hair was curled, her makeup light. And she was smiling. She didn't look at me. She looked at the gallery. At the judge. At the ceiling. Anywhere but at the people she'd hurt. The clerk called the case. The attorneys stood. And Savannah lifted her chin like she still had control. Your Honor, her public defender began. We would like to request the court's leniency in this matter. Miss Harper and my client are family. There was at worst a misunderstanding. And at best, a breakdown in communication during a time of medical crisis. A murmur rolled through the room. The judge raised one hand. Let's stay with the facts, counsel. Then he turned to Savannah. Miss Brooks, how do you plead to the charge of felony credit card fraud? Savannah smiled softly. Not guilty, Your Honor. Elise gave me permission. It wasn't formal, but it was understood. My stomach turned. The judge blinked. Understood, while she was in a medically induced coma. Savannah hesitated. Too mean. We had discussed things before. I knew she wouldn't mind. The prosecutor stood without waiting to be prompted. He was young, sharp, and precise. Your Honor, we have video evidence of the defendant entering the victim's hospital room on 3 separate occasions without medical purpose, removing a credit card, and photographing it. We also have audio from a staff mic where the defendant jokes about being compensated for her babysitting duties. These are not the actions of someone acting on behalf of a family member. They are calculated. And they are criminal. Savannah's smile faltered. The blue suit didn't look so crisp anymore. Then the footage played. Again. For the whole courtroom this time. Every breath. Every laugh. Every photo. Projected larger than life. I watched Savannah's body shift as it played. First still. Then rigid. Then small. When the lights came back up, she looked different. Smaller. Like the persona she had walked in with had cracked at the edges. She glanced around the room, searching for someone to meet her eyes. Derek didn't move. Patricia looked away. And for the first time, I saw something behind her eyes that looked like fear. Real fear. Not because she was sorry, but because she finally understood she couldn't talk her way out this time. The judge spoke firmly. Due to the deliberate nature of your actions, the plea deal is revoked. This matter will proceed to trial. Savannah's lawyer leaned over, whispered urgently. She nodded, barely. Then, just before being let out, she turned around. And finally, she looked at me. But the confidence was gone. And what was left wasn't remorse. It was realization. The lie was over. and the mask had fallen. The sentencing hearing felt different. Not colder, not harsher, just quieter. No cameras in the hallway, no reporters. Just a small courtroom with a few rows of benches and the faint ticking of an old wall clock above the exit sign. I sat alone this time. Derek had offered to come, but I told him not to. Not out of resentment, but because I needed to face this part by myself. I needed closure without leaning on anyone else's strength. Savannah was brought in from holding. She wore a simple black suit this time, the kind you borrow from the court's storage if your family cantor won't bring one. Her hair was flat, her face pale. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked like someone trying to disappear into the fabric of the chair. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Then the proceedings began. Her lawyer stood first. Your Honor, my client would like to speak before sentencing. The judge nodded. Go ahead. Savannah rose slowly. Her hands trembled as she unfolded a small sheet of paper. She didn't make eye contact with anyone. I want to say I'm sorry, she began, voice cracking on the first syllable. I was angry. I was jealous. Watching Elise live the life I thought I deserved it made me bitter. I kept telling myself she owed me, that taking her card was somehow fair. 10. She swallowed hard. But it wasn't. I didn't just take money. I took trust. I embarrassed my family. And I hurt someone who never actually hurt me. She sat down without waiting for a reaction. It wasn't performative. It wasn't dramatic. It just was quiet. The prosecutor stood next, listing the charges again. Felony fraud, unauthorized use of a financial instrument, and abuse of a vulnerable individual. Then came the sentencing. The judge didn't waste time. Miss Brooks, he said evenly, your actions were deliberate, sustained, and entirely self-serving. You violated not just the law, but the most basic expectations of trust within a family. He flipped through a few sheets of paper. According to the plea agreement, you will serve 18 months in state custody, followed by 5 years of probation. You are also ordered to repay full restitution to the victim and barred from contacting her or her immediate family for the duration of your sentence. Savannah didn't speak, just nodded once. She was led away in cuffs. No outbursts. No begging. Just silence. And that's when I realized something. Closure doesn't always come with grand finales. Sometimes it walks in, calm and quiet, dressed in orange, escorted by bailiffs, and carrying nothing but the weight of its own decisions. Outside the courthouse, Patricia was waiting. Her eyes were red, cheeks blotchy from crying. Mary, she said softly. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied. She hesitated, then said, I spent years defending her. And I was wrong. She broke all of us. Especially you. I nodded. She wasn't wrong. But I didn't feel anger anymore. Just space. If you've ever chosen peace over confrontation, distance, over drama, leave a comment that says, I let go to breathe again. Because sometimes protecting your peace means closing a door and never reopening it. And that's exactly what I did. Not with hatred, not with vengeance, but with finality. Distance was the only apology I ever needed. The first letter came 2 weeks after her sentencing. Plain white envelope. My name written in shaky cursive. No return address, but I didn't need one. I knew exactly where it came from. I stood in the kitchen for a long time before opening it. The envelope felt heavier than paper had any right to be. It was as if everything she hadn't said in court had found its way here. Wrapped in ink, sealed with regret, or what she wanted me to believe was regret. Inside was a single sheet of lined notebook paper torn from a composition book. Elise, I know you probably hate me. I don't blame you. But prison gives you a lot of time to think. And I've been thinking. At first, I told myself you deserved it. That you owed me. That I was just taking what was mine. But that's not the truth. The truth is, I was bitter. And I took it out on the one person who always treated me with more kindness than I ever earned. No apology. No specifics. Just reflection. Or the start of one. I didn't write back. A month later, another letter arrived. Then another. And another. They became routine, always addressed to me, never sent through family, never asking for anything in return. Some were rambling, defensive. I wasn't raised to think this way, you know. I just kept falling behind. And when I saw you pull so far ahead, I panicked. Some were bitter again, slipping back into old tones. It's easy to judge from the top, Elise. You've never had to worry the way I have. I read them. But I never responded. Until, one day, 8 months into her sentence, one letter arrived that felt different. Her handwriting was more careful, like she took her time. And her tone was quiet, measured, almost human. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I need you to know this. I didn't just steal your money. I stole your trust. I broke something I didn't know how to fix. And for the first time, I'm not blaming you. This was my fault. All of it. I stared at that paragraph for a long time. Reread it. Folded the page. Slipped it back into the envelope. Still, I didn't write back. But something shifted. Not in her. In me. For the first time, I didn't feel angry when I saw her name. Didn't feel that heat in my chest when I thought about what she'd done. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was something like peace. Derek noticed the change too. He didn't talk about her anymore, not even in therapy. Patricia had joined a support group for parents with incarcerated children. She never asked me to visit. She knew better, but she checked in more often. Brought the kids little gifts. Saturday quietly during school events instead of making everything about her. The dust was settling. And for the first time in a long time, I could see the ground beneath my feet again. Healing, I realized, doesn't come with one big moment. It's slow. It's quiet. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a letter you never asked for. And the silence you choose to keep afterward. A year had passed since the sentencing. Some days, it still felt close. Too close. Like I could still hear Savannah's voice in the back of my mind, sarcastic, entitled, sure that she'd never face consequences. Other days. It felt like a lifetime ago. Like I'd watched it all happen through a window and then closed the blinds. Life moved on, slowly but steadily. The kids got older. Derek went back to work. I returned to mine, part-time at first. I stopped checking the mailbox for letters. But healing doesn't always look like victory. Sometimes, it looks like not thinking about someone for an entire afternoon and realizing that's a kind of freedom. One day, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something nudged me to answer. Hi, is this Elise Harper? Yes. I'm calling from the Jackson Correctional Facility. I'm a counselor here. I've been working with Savannah Brooks for the last 6 months. Silence. The woman on the other end waited a moment, then continued. She's made a lot of progress. She's enrolled in our restorative justice program, and she's asked if you'd be willing to meet with her for a supervised conversation. There's no pressure, of course. Just something she's hoping for. I didn't respond right away. My fingers curled around the edge of the table. I thought of that courtroom, that footage, that first letter. I thought of everything she broke and everything I had to rebuild after. No, I said, gently but firmly. I appreciate the call. But no, I don't need to see her to move on. The counselor was kind. She thanked me for my time. The call ended. That night, I told Derek. He nodded slowly. I hope she finds peace, I said. But I don't need to go on that journey with her. I whistle. And that was the moment I finally understood. Closure isn't something someone gives you. It's something you decide to keep for yourself. Forgiveness isn't a pass. It's a boundary. And peace? Peace doesn't wait for anyone's permission. If you've ever chosen your own healing over someone else's guilt, drop a comment that says, I don't need closure to find peace. Because sometimes, peace is the choice you make when no one's watching. In the months that followed, I heard little about Savannah. Word was, she was taking classes business ethics, ironically. She still wrote sometimes, though the letters came less frequently. I stopped reading them. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need to anymore. I had nothing left to prove. No part of me that needed her understanding to validate what I went through. She had lost her freedom, her credibility, and, in many ways, her place in the family. But I had gained something far more valuable. Space. Stillness. A life no longer held hostage by betrayal. The last I heard, she was due for early release in a few months. Maybe she'll do better this time. Maybe not. But that part of the story isn't mine to tell anymore. This is the part where I let go quietly, fully. No drama. No fanfare. Just peace. And the life I built. Without her in it.